Welcome to Stoic Mindset. In this video, we will talk about 15 ideas inside the Stoic philosophy that, if you actually understand them, not just nod at them, but understand them, will change how you handle money problems, heartbreak, failure, betrayal, and death. They'll change who you are when things fall apart. So if you've got 30 minutes, close everything else, because this is the most useful thing you'll hear today. 1. The dichotomy of control. Some things are in your power. Everything else is none of your business. Let's start with the single most important idea in all of Stoicism, because everything else we're going to talk about today is built on top of it. The Stoics divided the entire universe into two columns. Column A, things within your control. Column B, everything else. And they were ruthless about which column things went into. Column A is tiny. Your thoughts, your intentions, your effort, your responses, your values. That's basically it. Column B is everything you lose sleep over. Whether you get the promotion, whether she stays, whether the business succeeds, what people say about you behind your back, the economy, traffic, your health to a significant degree, death entirely. Epictetus, that same slave with the broken leg, said it plainly: "Seek not that the things which happen should happen as you wish, but wish the things which happen to be as they are, and you will have a tranquil flow of life." Here's why this matters in a very practical, immediate way. When you pour your energy into column B, you are guaranteed to suffer. Not sometimes, guaranteed. Because you're putting your well-being in the hands of things that don't care about your well-being. The market doesn't care. Your ex doesn't have to care. The hiring manager has 30 other CVs. But when you pour everything into column A, your preparation, your character, your effort, your attitude, something remarkable happens. You stop being anxious. Not because the outcome is guaranteed, but because you've done everything you can do, and you've genuinely released the rest. Make the best use of what is in your power, and take the rest as it happens. Epictetus. Here's how this actually looks in a man's life. You're going into a difficult conversation with your boss about your salary. You can't control whether he says yes. You can't control whether he's in a bad mood. You can't control company budget decisions made 3 levels above him. What you can control: how prepared you are, the data you bring, how calm you sound, how clearly you make your case, whether you've researched your market value. A man who walks in having mastered column A and genuinely released column B doesn't come across as desperate, nervous, or needy. He comes across as grounded, and ironically, that's the version of you most likely to actually get the yes. The dichotomy of control doesn't just reduce anxiety. It makes you more effective at the thing you were anxious about. Ideology 2. Amor fati. Don't just accept what happens, love it. Most people, when something bad happens to them, go through the same invisible process. They accept that it happened. They deal with it. Maybe they eventually move on. The Stoics said that's not enough. They said the highest possible response to adversity isn't acceptance, it's love. Amor fati. It's Latin. It means love of fate. And the idea is radical. Whatever happens to you, including the worst things, should not just be tolerated, but embraced as necessary, as part of you, as the very thing that will shape you into who you need to become. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor who spent most of his 20-year reign at war, who lost multiple children, who faced plague and rebellion and betrayal, wrote this in his private journal. A blazing fire makes flame and brightness out of everything that is thrown into it. He wasn't being poetic for an audience. He was writing to himself, reminding himself that the things consuming him were also the things forging him. Think about the men you most respect, the ones who seem like they've been through fire and come out harder and cleaner. They didn't just survive their worst moments, they metabolized them. They turned loss into wisdom, failure into fuel, humiliation into hunger. That's not a personality trait. That's a practiced philosophy. The practical application of amor fati is not some spiritual bypass where you pretend pain doesn't hurt. It's a two-step internal process. Step 1. Let the thing be real. Don't minimize it. Don't rush past it. Don't numb it. Step 2. Ask, without bitterness, what does this make possible that wouldn't have been possible otherwise? The man who got fired and started his own company wasn't delusional when he was in the pain. He was practicing amor fati. He was refusing to see the event as a dead end. He was asking what door the closed door was actually pointing toward. You don't have to feel grateful in the moment, but the moment you stop fighting what happened and start asking what to do with it, that's where amor fati begins. Ideology 3. Memento mori. You are going to die, and you keep forgetting. In ancient Rome, when a general returned from a great military victory, he was given a triumph, a massive public parade through the streets. Crowds, celebrations, the entire city turned out. And walking behind him, assigned by Rome itself, was a slave whose only job was to whisper one sentence in the general's ear, over and over again throughout the parade. Memento mori. Remember, you will die. Not as a threat, not as a punishment, as a gift. Because the Romans understood something we've architecturally designed out of modern life. The constant awareness of death is what makes you take life seriously. We live in a world that has almost entirely eliminated death from daily consciousness. We outsource it to hospitals. We keep it off our feeds. We have whole industries designed to make you feel young and permanent and untouchable. And the result is a generation of men who are alive, but not living. Going through motions, tolerating mediocre jobs for decades, staying in relationships that died years ago, postponing the conversation, the project, the risk, the change. You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. Marcus Aurelius. Here is the direct challenge, not hypothetical, direct. There is a conversation you've been avoiding. There is something you've been meaning to build, start, or say for months, maybe years. There is a person you haven't called. And you keep not doing it because you operate, beneath the surface, on the assumption that there is more time. There's always more time. Tomorrow, next month, when things are less busy, when the moment is right. The Stoics would tell you that you are gambling with stolen currency. You don't own tomorrow. You never did. The only thing you've ever owned is right now. Memento mori isn't depressing. It's the most clarifying idea you'll ever sit with. Because the moment you take death seriously, not dramatically, just honestly, an enormous amount of nonsense immediately loses its power over you. The petty office politics, the social media scorekeeping, the grudges you've been maintaining. They shrink to their actual size, which is very small when measured against the fact that your time here is genuinely limited. The Stoic who carries memento mori isn't morbid. He's the most alive person in the room. Ideology 4. The obstacle is the way. The thing blocking you is not in the way. It is the way. In 1914, Thomas Edison's entire laboratory complex caught fire. 14 buildings, years of research, millions of dollars in equipment and prototypes, gone. Edison was 67 years old, which in any reasonable universe is too old to start over. His son found him watching the fire and ran to him, expecting to see devastation. Edison turned to him and said, "Go get your mother and all her friends. They'll never see a fire like this again." And then, after a pause, "We just got rid of all our mistakes. Now we can start fresh." That is not a man who had a naturally easy temperament. That is a man who had trained himself to see obstacles in a specific way. Marcus Aurelius articulated this training. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. This idea cuts against everything instinct tells you. When you hit a wall, every part of you says, "This wall means stop. Turn around. Find a different route." The Stoics say, "Look at the wall more carefully. The wall is the route." Here's what that looks like with real texture. A man is building a business and loses his biggest client. 40% of his revenue gone in one email. The instinct is, this is a disaster. The Stoic sees it differently. This disaster just exposed that the business was dangerously over-reliant on one client. The obstacle is the teacher. The crisis is the syllabus. The man who rebuilds after that loss doesn't just rebuild to where he was. He builds something structurally stronger because the obstacle forced him to. The obstacle made him better. The obstacle was, in retrospect, the most important thing that happened to him that year. This is not a way of pretending obstacles aren't real or painful. It's a way of ensuring that you extract every unit of value from them, instead of just absorbing the damage and moving on. Every obstacle is trying to teach you something. The Stoics' discipline is to stop long enough to hear it. Ideology 5. Negative visualization. Imagine losing what you have. You'll appreciate it like you never have before. The Stoics had a daily practice that sounds, on the surface, like a recipe for anxiety. They called it premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. Every morning, or at some quiet point in the day, they would deliberately imagine the worst that could happen. Losing their wealth, their health, the people they loved, everything. And they did this not to suffer, but to do the opposite, to immunize themselves against suffering, and to shatter the numbness that comes from taking things for granted. Here's the psychology of why this works. The human brain adapts to good things almost immediately. You got the raise, but 3 months later, it just feels like your normal salary. You moved into the apartment you dreamed about, but 6 months later, it's just where you live. The relationship that once made you feel like the luckiest man alive becomes routine. This is called hedonic adaptation, and it quietly robs most men of the gratitude they should feel about their own lives. Negative visualization reverses that. When you vividly imagine, really sit with it, that your partner is gone, your health is gone, your income is gone, something in your brain recalibrates. You stop relating to these things as background fixtures and start relating to them as the gifts they actually are. Seneca wrote letters to his friend describing this practice. He recommended imagining your own death, not in a morbid spiral, but in a controlled, deliberate meditation. Then return from that imagination to your present life and ask, given what I just imagined losing, what does this moment actually mean? The practical application is simple. Before your next dinner with someone you love, spend 2 minutes with the genuine thought that they might not be there one day. Not to upset yourself, to arrive at dinner as someone who is truly present, truly engaged, truly grateful for what is right in front of him. The Stoic doesn't wait for loss to teach him to appreciate what he has. He learns the lesson early, repeatedly, voluntarily. That's not pessimism. That's one of the highest forms of emotional intelligence. Ideology 6. Virtue is the only true good. Money, fame, and status are the wrong scoreboard. The Stoics made a philosophical claim that most modern men would find deeply uncomfortable. The only genuine good in life is virtue. Everything else, money, reputation, health, pleasure, comfort, success, they called preferred indifference. Things you might reasonably want, things you can pursue, but not things that determine the quality of your life. The 4 virtues the Stoics identified were wisdom, justice, courage, and self-discipline. They argued that a man who embodied these 4 things had a good life, full stop. Even if he was poor, even if he was unknown, even if his body was broken. And they pointed to Epictetus as living proof. A slave, no money, no status, no freedom of movement, no body autonomy. And by every Stoic measure, a man living the highest possible life. Now here's where this becomes uncomfortable for the modern man. We've been handed a completely different scorecard. Net worth, title, follower count, physical appearance, the car, the postcode. And the culture reinforces this scorecard relentlessly. The men who hit those numbers are held up as the models to emulate. But watch what happens when men actually hit those numbers. The research is depressingly consistent. The spike in happiness is real, but short. Within months, the baseline returns. And the man who spent a decade chasing the number is left with the number, and the same internal landscape he started with. The Stoics weren't anti-success. They weren't telling you to be poor or mediocre. They were telling you to get your priorities in the right order. Build character first. Build wisdom, courage, self-discipline, and justice into your daily life. And then pursue success as something that expresses that character rather than substitutes for it. The man who has money but no self-discipline is enslaved to his own appetites. The man who has fame but no wisdom is hollowed out by the performance of it. The man who has status but no justice becomes someone he doesn't want to be. Virtue isn't a soft word. It's the hardest thing in this entire list to actually build. But it's the only one that, when you have it, nobody and nothing can take away. Ideology 7, the inner citadel. Build a place inside you that nothing outside can destroy. There's a concept Marcus Aurelius returns to again and again in his private journal, which we now call meditations. He called it the inner citadel, the idea that the human mind, properly trained and disciplined, is a fortress, and that no external circumstance can breach it unless you open the gate. This is not metaphor. This is a description of something real that you've seen in real people. You've met men, maybe you know one, maybe you've read about one, who just don't break. Not in the sense of being numb or dissociated. They feel everything. They register difficulty fully, but they don't collapse under it. They process it and respond from somewhere still and clear inside them. That stillness is the citadel. Viktor Frankl, the Austrian psychiatrist who survived Auschwitz, described something identical when he wrote, "Everything can be taken from a man, but one thing, the last of the human freedoms. To choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way." The inner citadel isn't built in a moment of crisis. It's built slowly, quietly, in the thousands of small moments that come before the crisis. Every time you choose your response instead of just reacting. Every time you sit with discomfort instead of running from it. Every time you do the hard thing when the easy thing is right there. Every time you journal instead of scroll. Every brick you lay deliberately adds to this structure. And then one day, the diagnosis comes, the betrayal happens, the market crashes, the relationship ends, and you reach for your citadel, and it's there. Because you built it, day by day, in the ordinary moments that didn't feel like they mattered. The practical question isn't how to use the citadel. The practical question is, are you building it? Right now, today, in the small moments. Because the men who hold up in storms are not men who were given extra strength. They're men who built something before the storm arrived. Ideology 8, the view from above. Zoom out far enough and almost everything stops being a crisis. Marcus Aurelius had an emperor's perspective, literally. He governed the most powerful empire on earth. He sat at the center of the known world, and yet he kept writing reminders to himself to zoom out, to see Rome not as the center of the universe, but as one small point on a small planet in an incomprehensible expanse. He wrote, "How many a Fabricius, How many a Scipio, how many a Caesar have time swallowed up? These were the greatest men of previous eras, now forgotten. And Marcus, the most powerful living man, was reminding himself that he too would be forgotten, and that this was not depressing, it was liberating. The practice he was describing is called the view from above. It's a deliberate mental exercise where you zoom out from your problem, gaining altitude until the crisis below returns to its correct size. Here's what the exercise looks like in practice. You're stuck in a conflict with a colleague. It's been weeks. It's consuming your thoughts, your mood, your evenings at home. Now zoom out. See yourself and this colleague from above, two small figures in an office building. Zoom out further, a building in a city. Further, a city on a continent. Further, a pale blue dot floating in silence. From that altitude, you return to the conflict. Is it still the same size it was? Almost never. It doesn't disappear. It doesn't stop being real. But it returns to its actual proportions. And from its actual proportions, you can deal with it cleanly, without the emotional inflation that was making it unmanageable. The most anxious men in the world have the opposite problem. They have the view from below. Everything is magnified. Every setback is a catastrophe. Every criticism is an indictment. Every failure is permanent. The Stoic view from above doesn't change reality. It just shows it to you at the right scale. Ideology 9. Sympathia. You are not separate from other people. You are part of them. The Stoics had a concept called sympathia, a Greek word that translates roughly as mutual interdependence. The idea that all things in the universe are connected, and that human beings specifically are social creatures, wired not for isolation, but for contribution. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "What injures the hive injures the bee." He meant it as a direct instruction to himself, one of the most powerful men who ever lived, to remember that his purpose was not self-service, it was service. This matters enormously in a culture that has taken Stoicism and twisted it into a philosophy of radical self-interest. The internet version of Stoicism is often just dressed up individualism. Detach from everyone, rely on no one, feel nothing, win alone. The real Stoics would have found that repulsive. Epictetus taught that our highest function as human beings is to reason together and to act for the common good. Seneca wrote extensively about friendship and the responsibility we owe to others. Marcus Aurelius, who could have ruled Rome like a god, spent nearly his entire reign on muddy front lines because he believed the emperor's obligation was to the people, not the palace. The practical question this raises for the modern man is direct. Are you building your life in a way that contributes something to the people around you? Not just your bank account, not just your physique, not just your personal brand, but something that other people can actually lean on. The most resilient men are not isolated men. They are men who are deeply embedded in a network of relationships where they both give and receive, where they are honest, reliable, present, and willing to be inconvenienced for people they love. That's not weakness. That's the full expression of what the Stoics believed a man was designed to be. Ideology 10. Equanimity. Steady, not numb. There's a difference. If you were to pick one word to describe what a Stoic man looks like from the outside, it would be equanimity. A word that's not used enough because the thing it describes is not valued enough. Equanimity is not the absence of emotion. The Stoics weren't advocating for emotional suppression. That's a misread that has done enormous damage to how people understand this philosophy. Equanimity is the ability to feel the full range of human emotion while remaining rooted, clear, and functional. It's the difference between being moved by something and being swept away by it. Think about the most impressive person you've ever watched handle a crisis. Not someone who didn't react at all. A complete absence of reaction is actually concerning, not admirable. But someone who registered the difficulty, processed it visibly, and then responded from a place of clarity rather than panic. That quality, that steadiness, is equanimity. Seneca described it this way: "The Stoic sage is not a man of stone. He is moved, but he is not toppled. He bends in the wind, but he is rooted in the ground." The path to equanimity runs directly through the practice of pausing. Between what happens and what you do about it, there is a gap. For most men, that gap is invisible. Stimulus arrives and reaction follows almost simultaneously. The Stoics' entire training is about widening that gap. 10 seconds before you respond to an angry message. 1 deep breath before you walk into a difficult room. A night's sleep before you send the email you wrote in anger. These are not small things. These are the bricks of equanimity, laid one at a time. The man with genuine equanimity becomes, over time, the person everyone wants in the room when things go wrong. Not because he has all the answers, but because his steadiness creates the conditions where good answers can be found. That quality is rarer than talent. It's rarer than intelligence, and it's built, not given. Ideology 11. The present moment. The past is a memory. The future is a guess. This moment is real. Seneca wrote one of the most devastating lines in all of philosophy in a letter to his friend Lucilius. He wrote, "Omnia, Lucili, aliena sunt, tempus tantum nostrum est." Everything, Lucilius, is foreign to us. Time alone belongs to us. And then, a few lines later, he diagnosed the central tragedy of human life. We lose most of our time not to external theft, but to internal abandonment. We give it away. We spend it in the past, replaying things we cannot change. We spend it in the future, rehearsing things that may never happen. And while we're doing both, the actual present moment, the only place where life is actually occurring, passes by like scenery through a train window we're not watching. This isn't abstract. Watch what happens to a man during a dinner with his family while he's scrolling his phone. The food is real. The people are real. The conversation is real. He is physically present and completely absent. That is not living. That is existing in the body while the mind is somewhere else entirely. The Stoics weren't against planning for the future. Marcus Aurelius was one of history's great strategic planners. They weren't against learning from the past. Seneca was a historian of human error. What they were against was the unconscious, habitual drift into past and future that leaves a man unable to inhabit his own life. The practice here is straightforward but deeply demanding. Whatever you are doing, do it fully. Not while also doing something else. Not while narrating it to yourself. Not while comparing it to yesterday or planning for tomorrow. Just this. Completely this. This sounds simple. It is not simple. It requires constant recapture. Your mind will drift to yesterday's argument and tomorrow's meeting every 40 seconds. The practice is not to prevent the drift. The practice is to notice the drift and return. To keep returning. The man who masters this is not meditating on a mountain. He's fully present in his work, his relationships, his hard conversations, his moments of joy. He's actually in his life instead of beside it. And that changes the quality of every single thing he does. Ideology 12. Self-discipline as freedom. The man who does whatever he wants is the least free man alive. Epictetus said it directly. No man is free who is not master of himself. And this is the paradox that Stoicism asks you to sit with. The man who gives in to every impulse, who eats what he wants, sleeps when he wants, spends what he wants, says what he wants, reacts how he wants, that man feels free. He's doing whatever he wants. But the Stoics would say, he is the most enslaved man in the room. He is enslaved to his appetite, to his moods, to his ego, to comfort, to the algorithm that knows exactly which stimulus will make him stay on the screen for another 20 minutes. He cannot resist these things. They own him. and a man who is owned is not free. The truly free man is the one who has built the capacity to say no to himself, who can feel the pull of something, the craving, the impulse, the desire for comfort or validation or revenge, and choose differently. That capacity, built over time through consistent practice, is the foundation of every other quality a great man has. Think about every discipline that produces excellence: athletic training, financial discipline, emotional regulation in leadership, creative output. All of them require the same basic skill: the ability to do the hard thing when the easy thing is available. Self-discipline is not one of the virtues. It is the virtue that makes all other virtues possible. And here's the thing about the current moment in history. We are living in the most systematically undisciplined era in human existence. Every product, every platform, every algorithm is optimized to exploit the undisciplined version of you. They have billion-dollar teams working to make sure you click, scroll, consume, and react before your better judgment has a chance to weigh in. The Stoic man who has genuinely built self-discipline is not fighting the same war as everyone else. He has already won the internal fight. And the man who has won the internal fight can show up for every external one from a completely different position. Ideology 13. Live according to your nature. Not your base nature, your highest nature. They are very different. Zeno of Citium, who founded Stoicism around 300 BC, gave the school its central instruction in just 4 words: live according to nature. And for 2,000 years, people have been misunderstanding what he meant. He didn't mean follow your impulses. He didn't mean do whatever feels natural. Your base nature, the evolutionary inheritance you share with every other primate, wants sugar, wants sex, wants status, wants safety, and wants to minimize effort. If you live according to that nature, you'll be fat, distracted, anxious, and unfulfilled. There's nothing noble in following instinct. What Zeno meant was, live according to your highest nature, the nature that is uniquely human, the part of you that can reason, that can reflect, that can choose, that can create, that can love intentionally, that can sacrifice for something beyond itself. That nature. The Stoics believed that living according to your highest nature produces something they called eudaimonia, a Greek word that doesn't translate perfectly to English, but means something like flourishing or deep well-being. Not the pleasure of a good meal, not the excitement of a new purchase, something more durable. A sense of alignment between who you are and how you're living. Most men know this feeling in the negative. They feel it as its absence, the low-grade dissatisfaction that lives beneath surface-level comfort. The sense that something is off, that they're not quite being who they're supposed to be, that they're capable of more than they're currently doing. That feeling is not self-pity. That feeling is your highest nature noticing the gap. The question this ideology asks you to answer honestly is, are you building your life around your highest capacities? Are you doing work that requires and develops your best thinking? Are you maintaining the body that lets you show up fully? Are you being honest when dishonesty would be easier? Are you pursuing things that genuinely matter to you rather than things that are supposed to matter to you? The alignment between your highest nature and your daily actions is the only kind of satisfaction that doesn't disappear when you get it. Ideology 14. Impermanence. Everything passes, the good and the bad. Grip neither too tightly. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, "Time is a river of vanishing moments, and its current is swift." He wrote that as Emperor of Rome, surrounded by the greatest luxury the ancient world could produce, And he kept writing it, kept returning to it, because he needed the reminder. Impermanence is not a comfortable idea. It's not supposed to be. But sit with it honestly, and it does something remarkable. It simultaneously reduces your suffering and increases your gratitude in a way that nothing else can. Here's how it reduces suffering. You lose a client. Your relationship ends. Your body is injured. Your reputation takes a hit. The natural response is to feel like this is the new, permanent state of things. Like this darkness is the final condition. But nothing is permanent. No state, no emotion, no circumstance lasts. The Stoic who has genuinely internalized impermanence doesn't have to be told it will pass. He already knows it. He's already counting on it. Not passively, but as a structural fact about reality that reduces the weight of every difficult moment. And here's how it increases gratitude. The dinner with your father, your child's particular age right now, the specific way they mispronounce a word, the specific thing they find funny this year, the season of your life where your body works the way it currently works, your friendships, your health. All of it is temporary. All of it is passing right now as you listen to this. The Stoic doesn't hold on tighter when he realizes this. Holding tighter doesn't slow time. What the Stoic does is pay more attention, be more present, appreciate more fully, because he knows the window is open now and will close, and he doesn't know when. This applies equally to good fortune. The Stoics warned against becoming attached to success, to high status, to wealth, not because these things are bad, but because the man who grips his success too tightly becomes terrified of losing it. And the terrified man makes worse decisions than the grateful one. Hold everything lightly, not carelessly, lightly, with full appreciation and zero possessiveness. That is the Stoic relationship with all good things. Ideology 15. Philosophy as daily practice. Understanding these ideas once means nothing. Living them daily means everything. Here's the thing about Marcus Aurelius that most people miss. He was not writing Meditations as a philosophical treatise for posterity. He wasn't writing a book. He was writing private notes to himself, reminders, corrections, reorientations that he wrote every single day. He wrote things like, when you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. He wrote that, the Emperor of Rome, as a morning reminder to himself, because he knew that without the daily practice of reorienting his mind, he would drift, he would react, he would forget. And here's the uncomfortable implication of that. If Marcus Aurelius, a man who had studied philosophy for decades, who had learned from the greatest Stoic teachers of his era, who had access to every intellectual resource Rome could provide, still needed to write himself daily reminders not to be reactive, not to be petty, not to forget the dichotomy of control. What makes you think you can hear these ideas once and carry them permanently? The Stoics were not intellectuals who happened to write about philosophy. They were practitioners who used philosophy as a daily operating system. Every morning they set their intentions. Every evening they reviewed the day. They asked, where did I drift from my principles? Where did I hold to them? What requires adjustment tomorrow? The evening review that Seneca described was simple, but non-negotiable. 3 questions. Where did I fall short of who I want to be today? Where did I act from my best self? What will I do differently tomorrow? Not as self-punishment, as calibration, as the daily maintenance work of becoming the person you want to be. Because here's the truth that Stoicism keeps returning to, in different forms, across all 15 of these ideologies. You are not finished. You are not a fixed thing. Every day, through the small choices that feel trivial but aren't, how you respond to an insult, whether you do the difficult thing or the comfortable thing, whether you're present or distracted, whether you act from character or from impulse, you are building someone. The only question is who. If you want daily lessons in Stoic philosophy, if you want to build mental discipline, if you want to live with purpose instead of impulse, subscribe to Stoic Mindset, because strength is not loud, it is steady, and here we build it daily.